Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into some absolutely fascinating concepts from the book Hints to Find Happiness. We're zeroing in on Chapter 4, which, let's be real, offers a super structured, highly practical framework for resolving domestic friction and building a genuinely harmonious family. So, if you've ever felt like your home life could use a bit of a reset, you are in exactly the right place.
Here's our agenda for today. First, how to brighten the home. Second, words to expel evil spirits. Third, navigating old age anxiety and family. Fourth, the link between mindset and dietary habits. And finally, the concept of soul 70%, body 30%.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, how to brighten the home.
You know, whether we're talking about generational gaps, parenting clashes, or that classic age-old friction between a wife and her mother-in-law, keeping a household running smoothly is, well, it's tough. But in Chapter 4, the author introduces this really unique philosophy. What if our everyday family stress and even random physical ailments like sudden headaches or just feeling lethargic are actually linked to unseen spiritual influences? So instead of just looking at the usual psychological factors, this source material asks us to step back and consider the actual spiritual atmosphere we're creating in our living spaces.
Which brings up a highly relatable question. Why does the atmosphere in some homes just feel so heavy? You know that feeling, right? Where it's just thick with constant criticism, rebellion, and negativity. Have you ever walked into a room and literally felt the tension in the air? The book argues that when a home lacks light and laughter, it creates this sort of vacuum, and that vacuum just pulls negative influences right in.
Moving on to part 2, words to expel evil spirits.
So, to clear out that heavy, negative energy, which the text actually refers to literally as evil spirits, we really have to look at how we speak. An absolutely crucial piece of advice here is to stop acting as the household judge. Look, I know it's tempting to constantly correct everyone around us, but the book suggests this nonstop nagging actually breeds rebellion and literally invites that negative energy right through the front door. Instead, it suggests trying to bring a gentle, warm, and even, I love this word, a fluffy presence to your family members.
And this perfectly illustrates how we should approach marital conflict. Think of your spouse like a mirror. If you're constantly nagging or speaking sharply, well, you're going to get sharp reactions right back. So instead of trying to force your partner to change, which, let's face it, rarely works, transforming your own attitude and words naturally limits the damage and shifts the entire dynamic of the relationship.
So what's the game plan? How do we actually expel these negative influences? First, we have to consciously stop complaining and finding faults. Easier said than done, I know. Second, actively use bright, positive words to just fill the home with laughter. And third, the author offers this really brilliant practical life hack. If you find yourself dwelling on negative thoughts while doing the dishes or folding laundry, play some positive audio. Put on an uplifting speech or some great music. Doing this literally drives the negativity away by changing the actual frequency of your environment.
Next up, part 3, old age anxiety and family.
Now this brings us to a challenge so many of us face. The friction that comes with aging relatives who might suddenly become demanding, stubborn, or pessimistic. The author explains that as physical capacities decline, the elderly might develop a mindset the book categorizes as taking love. Essentially, they fear they'll be useless or forgotten, so they might throw tantrums or demand constant attention, honestly, kind of like a young child. But framing this as a fear response rather than just pure selfishness, that completely changes how we approach it, right? It brings so much more empathy to the table.
To combat this anxiety, the explainer outlines some really proactive steps for seniors themselves. Rather than focusing on what they're losing, they're encouraged to purposefully plan a second or even a third phase of life. This means consciously speaking bright words, letting go of past grievances and pessimism, and gracefully passing the baton of leadership to the younger generation. It's all about allowing seniors to find genuine new meaning in their later years.
All right, part 4, mindset and dietary habits. Let's look at how our daily habits influence our home's harmony. The author draws a super fascinating dietary comparison here. They suggest that a shift toward a more Western, meat-centric diet is actually linked to an increase in our aggressive, fighting instincts. On the flip side, a traditional Japanese, vegetable-centric diet is linked to fostering a milder, way more patient mindset. So the argument here is that our dietary habits don't just affect our physical health, they're deeply intertwined with the spiritual tendencies of our minds, which directly impacts how we interact with our families. And finally, part 5, soul 70%, body 30.
This brings us to what might be the most profound concept in the book, the overarching spiritual math of human existence.
The text quantifies our makeup in this really striking way. Whether we're discussing genetic diseases, intelligence, or physical limitations, the soul accounts for roughly 70% of the equation, while the physical body and genetics account for only 30%. Crazy, right?
To break this down, the book uses this brilliant metaphor. It compares the soul to an operator or software, and the brain to the hardware or the computer. Think about it like this. If the brain is the computer, it absolutely still needs basic physical maintenance, protein, oxygen, sugar, to function optimally. But no matter how top tier that computer is, it's not going to perform well if the operator, the soul, doesn't know how to use it or just lacks the right training and effort.
So the crucial takeaway here is absolute empowerment, because the soul, meaning your mindset, your effort, and your spiritual tendencies, holds that 70% majority share. You are not purely bound by your genetics. By actively changing your mind's tendencies, you can effectively override and overcome seemingly fixed physical or genetic boundaries. It means your harmony, your intelligence, and your health are largely in your own hands.
So, we'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on regarding your own family dynamic. If 70% of your reality is governed by your spiritual approach and your mindset, how are you going to use that power? What bright, positive words will you choose to reprogram the atmosphere of your home today? Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and we really hope these structured insights help you build a brighter, far more harmonious living space.